On today's episode of the No Matter What Club, in recognition of Pride Month, we welcome two of our friends from Gender Wellness of Los Angeles, Casey and Grace. Casey Weitzman is the president and founder of Gender Wellness of Los Angeles. Casey has been a licensed marriage and family therapist for more than 3 decades, counseling children and adults who are exploring gender identity and/or sexual orientation. Grace O'Connor is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the vice president of Gender Wellness of Los Angeles. Grace specializes in working with the transgender and non-binary populations. She obtained her master's degree in clinical psychology from Antioch University with a specialization in LGBTQ plus identity. Grace has spent many years helping LGBTQ plus patients struggling with mental health and addiction-related disorders. The two of them travel throughout Southern California conducting talks, trainings, and workshops on issues specific to transgender and non-binary identity. Please help me welcome Casey and Grace to the podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the No Matter What Club, the Club. I'm so excited. I know Mel is excited as well. We've been talking about this for a while, to have two of our favorite ladies from Gender Wellness, a trans-affirming therapeutic program here in Los Angeles, doing great work in the community. We have Grace O'Connor and then the owner, Casey Weitzman.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, y'all. So happy you're here. Thank you.
We are, I mean, honestly, we are so aligned in our mission, which I think is really important, especially what's going on today in the world. And so I'd love to hear a little bit from Grace just about your story, which is just, you know, so beautiful. And then Casey, the you know, somebody that has just kind of spearheaded the trans affirming care movement I want to talk about too. Do you want to?
I'm happy to share my story. Grace, she, her are my pronouns. So I was fortunate in that I got sober at the age of 27 in 1993. And I was really hitting bottom at that time, really didn't have any direction, was definitely not out as an LGBTQ person. But I was really bottoming out in drugs and alcohol. And I ended up getting help, and I ended up going to a treatment program and was in inpatient for about 16 days, did an outpatient for about a year.
You stayed in for like a year.
I stayed in outpatient for a year.
To be honest, I'm a long-term treatment person too.
I was in a recovery community for a year. Lived with other people that were getting sober at that time. When they said do 90 meetings in 90 days, I was doing 120 meetings in 90 days. And, you know, I didn't play because I was desperate. I mean, I was really, I feel like some people hit that chemical bottom. Mine was an emotional bottom. I just couldn't keep going on the way I was going. I was so miserable and I was hiding so much. So getting sober for me gave me structure. It gave me, you know, 12-step and the community of people at my sober living. It was like we created a community and we would go out together. And
may I ask when you transitioned?
So I didn't transition until 2015. Okay. So I came out as a gay man in 1999, and that was
the good old days.
Coming out as a trans person in 1999 was not an option for me at all. And I knew for a fact that I was trans. I didn't have a word for it because transgender didn't really exist as a word at that time. Transsexual.
Can I ask just this question? Like, when you say I knew, like, what were some of the nuances of the knowing without the language?
Wow. Like when I pictured myself out in the world, I was a woman.
Oh, I see.
Without a doubt. I mean, I actually, when I started considering actually coming out as an LGBT person, in my brain, I always pictured being a woman. But like that was an impossibility in 1999. It just couldn't happen. So I came out as gay. I was like, that was the easiest.
What was available.
It was half true.
We've talked about this before. I was bisexual for years.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So you know, it was a great 16 years of living out as an LGBT, you know, gay man, as it were. But in 2015, I really hit a wall again because I was still not really living my truth. I still wasn't being authentic. And so when I came out in 2015 as trans and decided to go to therapy school, my whole life changed when I came out as trans. Everything changed. My whole life opened up in front of me. Everything became possible. I got a mission in life. I felt like I had a purpose for the first first time. Everything changed when I came out as trans.
Your 10 years is coming up.
It is coming up. That's true. Oh my God, I didn't think of that.
The only reason I know that is because I'm class of 2015 in my sobriety, and
there you go.
10 this year. So
yeah,
God willing.
Wow.
God willing.
And that's actually 2015 is really when, for better or worse, Caitlyn Jenner came out in 2015, and that's when the industry really started to boom, because it became like a water cooler topic. And that's when more people started to consider or start to come out. And although Caitlyn is not a good representation for us, I think people started thinking more about their gender identity. So,
and it became a part of the conversation,
yes,
right? And
yes.
Before it was sensationalized in the
Yes.
media and all of that stuff,
Yep.
and very public transition, but it was never a part of the conversation.
Never.
Yeah.
You had worked with the trans community long before 2015, right?
My first client was about 1989.
Wow.
And there were no words, because when you ask about her story, being gay in the 70s and 80s was almost so taboo. I mean, there were no books. The center was kind of like an apartment building, but there really was no place. And so even when I went to college, when there was gay day for jeans, I wore white pants. So
Gay day.
They had a gay day at college. But I didn't know if you had finished your story because.
Oh, I'm done.
Okay.
Go right ahead. I mean, there's more, but I would love to hear from you.
You've heard my story so many times.
Something new every time.
I guess that when you're talking about just it was being LGBT or queer or trans was so underground at that time.
It was so underground.
And where I think, we were making so much progress as a community over the last few years. And then there was definitely a shift here in the last year, which has kind of just halted a lot of the progression that I think we've all felt as a community. But when you were working with that population in 1989, first of all, let me say thank you. I mean, there are probably so many people that needed that resource that just didn't even know it was available. And you talked about community, which is
so important
for me, what saved my life. How did you navigate working with something that was so taboo in a time where we weren't accepted?
Right. Well, my concern about being gay was really negative. And then, anything you saw around trans was like Jerry Springer or Sally Jesse Raphael or Donahue, and it was a sensationalized. And so I worked at a gay and lesbian organization. My background's in foster care. And I worked for this company called Glass, and we placed kids 0 to 17 in gay and lesbian homes.
Wow.
And back then, men were molesting kids, supposedly, and they didn't want to place kids in our homes. And so I had to do these home studies, but it really turned around. That was also during the time of caring for babies with AIDS. And while I was there was a client that my supervisor said, I can't work with this client, dykey, lesbian, you take it. And in the first session, this client said to me, I love women, but I'm not a woman. And I was like, wow, I know nothing about this. It's going to be the blind leading the blind, but we'll figure this out together. And I found it to be the most authentic group of people I'd ever worked with. But I wasn't out at all. So being gay was taboo in my family. I was kicked out of the house.
So your family found out, or they knew there was a discovery?
When I came back to college, I moved back to my parents' house, and I won't go into the story, but my mom figured it out and said, "You're not gay, are you?"
Yeah.
And I said, well,
yes, I am.
Yes, I am. And they're like, okay, we have 3 days to get out. And I was working at William Morris in the talent agency back then, and I didn't know how I was going to make it, but it tended to make me go back in the closet and also have, try and date men and have sex with men. And so it took a long time. But as far as the work, I just said to this client, that's why I'm saying, even though it's so bad right now, it was bad back then. And we figured out a way with no providers, no surgeons, no counseling, no 12-step programs that, I was just going to figure it out. And there were a few of us here in LA, but very few. So it was really just on-the-job training.
The thing that I love about our community, the queer community, the trans community, the gay community, we're resilient as fuck.
Very resilient.
Resilient as fuck.
Resilient, resourceful, yes.
Well, and as a drug addict, I consider myself pretty resourceful as well. So I feel like my whole life was built around survival and fitting in and trying to navigate this social circle and how am I accepted here? And, I feel like I reached the underbelly of the gay community because within the gay community, cocaine and Molly and Molly wasn't around, but cocaine and ecstasy were acceptable. Ketamine was acceptable, but crystal meth wasn't acceptable, right? And so as a gay man that started doing crystal meth, trying to navigate that world, and it's just, we are some of the most resilient people. And I've been watching, I called Mell the other day and I was like, I have to stop doom scrolling. It's just something that I just had to, because I was infuriating myself. But there was this video that I was watching, and it was a trans woman, and they were talking about look, we did this in the 80s, we've done it in the 90s, we've done it in the 2000s.
We're going to do it again.
We're here.
Yeah, that's right.
We're here.
Yeah.
So I love the work that you do. Grace, every time that I talk to you, I just get so moved by you. You are just one of the most beautiful individuals. And it's so interesting that coming out at a later age and kind of just stepping into who you are as a person, how did that feel?
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. I had been cross-dressing as a kid. This has been going on for a long, long time. But it got very clear to me that I was a trans woman in 2005. I had a moment of sitting in my living room, and all of a sudden, all the scales had gone away, and I just saw, I was like, oh my God, I'm a trans woman. I'm not just some weekend
seeing yourself for the
person. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, Grace, you got some work to do. Honey, if this is true, you better start doing some work. So I went back to therapy and really started doing some really, really deep work in therapy and working on myself and grieving losses and, building resources and building up the internal resiliency that I was going to need to kind of navigate this. Because I grew up on the south side of Chicago, blue collar, working class. Yeah.
773 or 312?
773. Okay. Well, actually, yes, 773. South side.
Yes.
And there were no LGBT people. There were no trans people. So I didn't have any models that I could look to and go, okay, this is what I'm going to be. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and LGBT people were really looked down upon in my community, and they were invisible. So when I came out, it was terrifying. I still had so many issues related to, not being a part of the binary anymore and saying I'm actually a transgender woman. It was terrifying. I was really worried I was going to be rejected. That was the big thing for me. I was so scared I was going to be cast out of society because I didn't fit the binary anymore. And I have to tell you, coming out is one of the hardest things in the world to do.
You come out twice.
I came out twice. Yeah, that's true. The clients that I work with today, 98% of them are trans and non-binary people. It is so hard to navigate that journey. There's so many things: coming out to family, coming out to spouses, coming out to kids, getting resources, accepting yourself, building up your community of support. It's really challenging.
I really heard you at the beginning of what you were saying, and I wanted to go back to the grief process.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious about what that was like, because I think that's actually one of the things that's underserved in therapeutic relationships with trans or non-binary folks is there's this grief of taking off the avatar that you've been walking in the world with and just kind of blossoming into your own authenticity. Yeah. But there's still this period of mourning and loss. So I'm curious what that was like for you.
I talk about that a lot with my clients because I think I had this idea that when you come out, it's like, oh my God, everything's amazing. And I think all the representations I had seen were like, oh, now I'm finally free and I can be myself and everything's joyful. And that was not my experience.
And there's the price of admission.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think being trans is every bit an inside job as it is an outside one.
Absolutely.
And then we met, you know, you were saying just how touched you are by Grace. I met Grace a couple times throughout the years, and her name was just so perfect for her. I just thought, I have to get to know this woman, and I really want to get to know her. And we had, how many years ago was that?
Oh
where
God,
it was like
2019 maybe? Maybe
probably
2018?
even sooner. And I just said, I have to have her. I want
2018
to
probably.
nourish her. I want to bring her on board. I want
It's
to.
so funny that you brought up her name today, because when I was driving here, I was thinking, my last name is Grayson.
Oh my gosh.
And I honestly, this thought went through my head today, and I was like, how weird would it be if our names were Grace Grayson? Stupid fleeting thought. This is how my mind works.
Grace
But
Grayson.
I literally was thinking of that this morning.
Wow.
It's a beautiful name. And you know, I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound offensive, but like when they say that being trans is a choice, why would anyone choose
Exactly.
to go through
Right.
all of this
All of this
that you're talking about? Because it sounds beautiful, but it sounds painful.
Yeah.
Beautifully painful.
Yeah. Well, I will share with you that there did come a moment in 2015, and I think a lot of trans people have this moment where it was, I'm either going to come out, I'm going to completely ghost everyone in my life and they'll never hear from me again. I'll move somewhere and no one will,
I have the private island
get rid of my
fantasy
phone,
all the time,
and no one will ever hear from me again, or I will kill myself.
Yeah.
I was going to ask.
And I think that it was 33% of each one.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of trans and non-binary people, unfortunately, we have such high suicide attempt rates in our community. I think a lot of people see suicide as the only option because coming out is so hard. It's so hard.
Do you happen to know, because you're my statistical guru, do you happen to know the stats around suicide in the trans population?
1 in 5 have attempted suicide in the trans and non-binary population. Yeah. That was the latest study from the Trevor Project.
That's horrific.
Not thought about, attempted.
Yeah.
And the other part is like how much of that is substance abuse related and mental health challenges related, whether it's anxiety, depression, PTSD, or trauma, or undiagnosed mental health. That like one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is you were talking about how this journey was really painful, and we have the privilege and the luxury of having the no matter what recoveries and the gender wellness in Los Angeles. Right. If you're in a Florida, Texas, Tennessee, like how do
North Dakota.
What do they do? How do trans individuals, non-binary individuals, queer individuals, how do they navigate that in a small state where gender affirming treatment or behavioral health treatment is illegal?
Well, I mean, I will say, like, in my own journey, right, we didn't have the internet to figure this stuff out.
Yes.
And I will say that has had a huge impact on people where there are zero resources or affirmative care or like even, therapy resources, right? Like people can navigate providers a lot easier. It doesn't have to be in my small little town. It can be a provider that's a state away or maybe in a more metropolitan area where they're more informed, or they can join social groups and things like that. So I think the navigation looks a lot different, and I'm so grateful that it does, because there's community groups, there's online platforms, all of this stuff. I mean,
Reddit.
Like,
how many of my clients are on Reddit?
This was not available. I mean,
no,
like, listen,
it certainly was not. It was always in the back in a bookstore, like near the porn section.
Right.
If you want a little, I forgot what the first trans magazine was.
I can't even, I'm trying to imagine it. Like when I used to go to Circus of Books back in the day.
Oh my goodness.
Y'all remember?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
The magazines in the back. It's like, it was so sensationalized for trans people at that time.
And fetishized in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was just going to say that you're able to get licensed in other states as clinicians, and I am licensed in Florida. So talk about that. The one client I have has to drive over 2 hours just to get gender affirming care.
Right.
And
that was going to be my next question. What is gender affirming care? What does that look like?
Yeah. Good question.
Well, Grace, how about, gender affirming care to me, it wasn't called that, but it's just about being respectful, asking the person their name and pronouns. What would you add to that? It's just really seeing the person for who they are and be curious. And
I think that's the key. I think there's some misconceptions out there that trans affirming therapists are out there just handing out hormones
and surgeries.
The WPATH guidelines are so stringent, and they're based on 40 years of study. So,
yes.
I can't imagine someone walking into my office and them telling me that they're trans or non-binary and not believing them and saying, sorry, I don't.
Yeah.
Why? What happened to you? Is there trauma in your family?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine doing that. Of course you believe people. You want people to have agency.
Right.
And somebody who's coming into my office knows themselves so much better than I ever will.
Right.
It's my job to help remove the blocks that are keeping them from being the best version of themselves.
Right.
That's how I look
barriers.
at it. Yeah. Getting rid of barriers.
When I think of gender affirming care, so no matter what recovery, we pride ourselves on offering gender affirming treatment. And what that looks like for us is very similar to what you're saying is the first step is just honoring pronouns.
Yes.
But for us, it's eliminating barriers. And so, a lot of places in the substance abuse world say they're LGBT friendly.
Okay.
And so
we're going to have a discussion.
My question
yes.
to that is, what does that mean? How do you navigate a non-binary patient whose dead name is on their health insurance? The parents are funding treatment. They don't agree with them being trans or non-binary. How do you navigate that situation? How do you do observed UAs, urine analysis screening? How do you do a search upon admit? How do you navigate a newly diagnosed person with HIV? How do you navigate gender appropriate housing? Do you house them with their gender assigned at birth, or do you house them with how they identify?
Right. And before you guys came along, Mel might know this, but I tried to place clients of mine in centers that said exactly what you said, but then when it came to what bedroom they were going to be in, I was given the option,
house them alone?
Huh?
House them alone?
House them alone.
Completely ostracize them.
Or,
or
put
with their
them.
gender assigned at birth.
Yeah. And the idea was, they've already isolated their whole life. Why would I bring them to a treatment center and you're going to put them in a room by themselves? Yeah. And so I would talk to the executive directors no, this is awful. You said this, but you're not doing the work. We didn't have no matter what. So when we were trying, I schmooze and go to all these treatment centers and it's would I put myself in here and how would I be respected? And, if it's not a good fit, I'd rather have the agency say, I don't think we can do it. But there are agencies like yours now where it's because I want to bring a client to a place like yours if they're obviously dealing with substance, but mental health wise, I always want to work with you guys because I want them back. Or I want clients for yours.
It takes a village.
It really, really does.
But to be so grateful for you guys.
And for the village, that also includes, a linkage to care, whether it's for their HRT, whether they need a trans affirming dentist, whether they need, a trans affirming pediatrician. Trans people have children,
And that's what we've been doing. Our resources are either Grace and I have gone to the person themselves. I've had electrolysis done. As far as dentists, if you go through our resources, all those things we have, but it's taken 30 years to compile a list of providers that are really doing what they and love it. That's what I did want to say, even though the administration's taking away so much, so many more of us have come out. And we never had places in LA like Children's Hospital. We didn't have UCLA. We didn't have Cedars, USC, St. John's. So I had one doctor and one surgeon, and that was it for the longest time.
And to me, that's what gender affirming treatment is. is, right? Like this conversation that we're having today is we're saying, hey, there are some things that are not working. And in order to satisfy the needs, and they deserve it, of our trans, non-binary, queer population, we need to cater a whole wraparound plan for these individuals so that they feel supported, so that they get the mental health services that they need, that they're able to get, if they want to get on hormones. I mean, you know, gender affirming care is life-saving care.
That's
yes,
right.
it is.
Yeah.
And so I have made it my life's mission for my career, and then it, you know, my career bleeds over into my personal life, you know, like to give a voice to those that don't have a voice.
Yeah.
Me too.
Same.
Yeah.
Because bitch, I have a lot to say.
Yes.
Get this one
And
off.
it's really needed right now.
It is needed.
It's really needed.
Mel, may I ask a little bit about your journey to identifying as non-binary?
I mean, similar to what you were saying, it's like, it's always something that I knew. I'm a beauty pageant survivor. So I was pushed into hyperfemininity. I was pushed into sexualizing and objectifying myself to win prizes, and I hated it. I knew that I wasn't that. I knew that I wasn't a boy. I knew that I wasn't a girl, and I never felt a place where I fit in. And like me growing up, like, there was never a language around that. There was barely a language around identifying as gay or lesbian, let alone like having language around gender. So, you know, I never, and I'm going to say this, which I'm so glad that we're having a candid conversation on a microphone.
Sorry, I just popped it out of nowhere.
I never felt like lesbian fit me. It was never like, I was told that's what I was because I am attracted primarily to women. Like, I mean, I'm pretty pan at this point, but like, that never fit me. And it always felt like crunchy and like underneath my skin. And I was like, but the world is telling me like, this is my only option. So I guess I'm going to choose this option. And then I got a label of more of a butch lesbian. And I was like, but that's not it either. Because I already like kind of embraced some of my more feminine side, more masculine side, but there was never a place for it. So I actually started asking the question around my own gender identity when I first got sober, right? And the people that I was asking, I didn't find to be very friendly to the question.
Yes.
And I was told, as a person who's in the rainbow population, I was told, well, you know, do a Google search. But when I was actually asking trans people, hey, would you be willing to like share your experience with me? And it wasn't, it was not for like educational purposes. It was more for like, I'm having this experience and I don't know how to ask the right questions. And I was shut down by a few. So I stopped exploring it at that point because I found it to be very unfriendly. And then I had a friend who identified as non-binary. They began taking hormones, and like they were open enough to like sit down and have dinner with me and kind of explain some of the language around. This is probably a year and a half into my sobriety, right? So like 8 years ago. And finally someone sat down and like was willing to just explore this with me. And that was life-changing for me. Wow. And then I was like, wait a minute. So there's a place in the middle. It was like an agender, a non-binary, whatever it is. And I'm like, that's me. Like, that's where I fit, right? And I've always known. Similar to the way that you said you always knew. Like, something just didn't fit in the world that I was being asked to live in. And so from that conversation, you know, I don't know about a social transition because I'm always a little bit more mass presenting, and I always have been my entire life, with the exception of being forced into petticoats, right? So with the exception of
sequins?
No sequins for me.
I love a sequin.
But, well, we know this. But hey, but I finally was able to have an inviting conversation with another trans person, and that became a jumping off point for me. And, you know, I toyed around with like pronouns like she, they, and then I still kind of eked back with the she, her of it all. Then I was like, no, I'm actually they, them. And I was also in an environment where I didn't feel like professionally, like there's a lot of things, right? I didn't really feel like I could be the full breadth of Mell.
That was going to be my next question.
And
the transition professionally.
That was hard.
Yeah.
Because in the work that I do, like, because it is such a highly publicized issue, that, you know, the trans and non-binary and gender identity and all of that, I had a lot of people, I go out and do education and presentations around chemsex. And when I started to change my pronoun and, you know, really step into that, a lot of people started asking me about gender. And I felt like the message was almost being missed because it became about me, not about the work that I was doing. And so there was a period of time where I really grappled with that. And it, you know, I learned how to like respond with finesse after going to several conferences and talking about chemsex and really being able to address both, because it was a very like jarring. I was like, wait, I just gave you 90 minutes on sexualized drug use, the thing I'm most passionate about helping people with in this world. And your first question was about gender identity. And I had to really negotiate like both pieces, right? Like I'm a clinician, this is my life's work. And also I am a person who falls under a trans umbrella and I can speak to both.
I was just going to say, you've evolved because I loved you right away too.
Yeah.
And I've watched you evolve personally and professionally, because I think we've known each other for maybe like 8 years.
Yeah, we have.
Sure. And I just said, this is an amazing person.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest, I still get pronouns wrong sometimes.
Right.
And sometimes they change.
Yep.
So that's why I always say, what name? And because for my clients, and I'm sure with yours, sometimes it changes. They'll start with a pronoun.
Sometimes I've gotten clients' pronouns wrong, and I have to apologize.
I just say, oh my God.
I'm so sorry.
And that's how I work on with the parents too. Like what I've done with parents, every time they misgender their kid, there's like a jar on the table.
And you put a quarter in it.
No. It's 2025.
Like you'd be
2025. Rich. It's $1. And every time they
inflation, baby, you better put more in the cup. Yeah.
So it's almost like a behavioral change, right? Like, and it's fun for everybody
it's
for a while.
Exercise.
Yes.
Is it? I love it. Here I am thinking a quarter. I'm like, let's go
quarter?
shopping.
No. These are big bills.
You know, this conversation really means a lot to me because we're all learning.
Yeah.
And we're all growing. And I think the powerful part in that statement is saying like, hey, if I do get something wrong, I would like to correct it and make it right and apologize. Yeah. Your work with this community, I can imagine that it's changed your life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
When did you get licensed?
I became officially licensed in 2022. I went to graduate school in 2015 and graduated in 2017, and then spent 4 years working in dual diagnosis treatment as a primary clinician and a group facilitator. But I met Casey years before that, and I thought maybe eventually I want to get into private practice, but I didn't have a real plan for that. And then I met Casey. And it's like, it was the perfect marriage because she was ready. I think you were ready for somebody to come in and
because I had done it all myself.
Yeah, help carry the load and start, you know, she interviewed me 4 times for the job.
Four
times.
Very thorough in the first 5 minutes.
And I had to come in with like a plan of like what I was going to do to contribute to the business.
Okay.
So, yeah, so she really made sure that I was going to come in and be a contributor to the business. But it was all great stuff. The trainings and workshops and podcasts and, you know, really focusing more on our social media. And so, you know, I feel like I have a mission in life. That's a beautiful thing to feel like you have. I don't feel like I ever had that before I found this work. It does feel like my mission. I was telling somebody this morning that I do think about legacy sometimes. And I think, what do I want my legacy to be when I leave this earth? And it's like, I'm not going to have kids. It's not going to happen at this point. My legacy is going to be the people that I've helped along the way. That's going to be my legacy.
Yeah.
So I think about that all the time. I love the work that I do.
We're in the business of people's lives.
We are.
Casey, can I ask, what is gender wellness?
It's just a name that I came up with, my business partner at the time. It was just about everything being more positive, because in a world where trans or queer people were really being attacked, I always want gender wellness to be about hope. And so that's why I came up with it, like how do we make people well instead of making it negative and dark? I mean, it can be all those things. But in the last 35 years, I've watched people blossom that have come to me and say, I could never transition. I'm like, inside I'm thinking, yes, you can. And, I've always been like their cheerleader. Uh-huh. So the gender wellness is just about working on the dysphoria, working on the mental health, because you really, in my mind, transitioning, you really got to be as healthy mentally as you can, because you have to be willing, if people misgender you, not to want to attack them or beat them up. Mm-hmm. I've had clients in the past, like when they were kicked out of a women's restroom, the client would say, well, I can pull my pants down. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. Mm-hmm. But just kind of always just believe that it could be what it is now. And even with this administration, and it's going back a little, like I said, having all of us here with our passion and love, there's so many people that want to work in this community. I have never seen so many physicians. I've never seen so many, doctors and surgeons and legal people that want to help us now. Mm-hmm. And that fight, when I started, it was a fight, but nothing like it is now.
Speaking of the fight and resilience, it's Pride Month.
Yes.
I would love to hear a little history from our historian about the trans impact on Pride.
The impact.
Yeah.
You mean the start of the revolution?
The start of the revolution.
Yeah. It was a trans woman of color who started the Stonewall riots. Yeah. And it was trans people who actually, they were the leaders in the fight.
Yeah.
And this goes all the way back to 1920s Harlem, right? people were dressing in drag, but now we know them as transgender individuals. They weren't dressing in drag. They were actually a representation of trans people and trans people of color that brought our community together, not only at the Stonewall events, but throughout the 1920s and even into the 30s. So trans folks or those who gender benders, if you will, mm-hmm. They actually brought our community together more than lesbian, bisexual, or queer, or gay people did. It was that trans people started the revolution. Mm-hmm. So in so many different ways.
The first LGBT uprising was in 1966 in San Francisco at the mm-hmm. Compton Cafe. And that was a lot of trans people of color, primarily trans women of color.
Those trans women of color, they got it down.
They do have it down.
Seriously.
Yeah.
They have prompted and started so many different aspects and iterations of gay, queer, trans rights, human rights. Let's be real.
I've shared this before, and I'm sure we'll hear it a lot over the next few weeks because it is our Pride edition. But I, as a young gay boy, thought Pride was for a circuit party. I thought Pride was for, a parade.
Yes.
We put on glitter, we go out in the streets, we wear harnesses, we, shop the little shops, we support LGBT businesses. But in my years of growing up and now working with this population, have learned that Pride is a revolution of our rights.
Yep.
And it was started by trans women.
Yep.
It was started by a trans woman and an advocacy group here actually in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. At the Black Cat Tavern.
Yep.
The Black Cat Tavern and the riots that happened there when people were set up on a New Year's Eve and, police busted in and threw everyone in jail for lewd conduct for kissing each other at midnight. And then this advocacy group, Personal Rights and Defense and Education, the Spells Pride, was formed along with the Advocate magazine, was born at the Black Cat too. So we have a lot of rich history in San Francisco, even Folsom. I look at Folsom and it's oh, leather parade, leather fair, cute, fun. But it was all about gentrification and socioeconomic disparities in San Francisco that Folsom Street Fair was formed.
Wow.
A lot of trans people, of course, flocked to San Francisco. That was a safe city for a lot of folks, along with New York City and Harlem and stuff like that. So
I love it. Well, to celebrate Pride, which is the acronym is one more time is what?
Personal Rights and Defense and Education. And it was funding to get people out of jail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what it was there for.
Wow.
Yeah.
So to commemorate Pride and celebrate it and bring the community together, I think Gender Wellness is throwing a few events. What do we have coming up?
We love doing work in the community. We're big fans of being out there in the community and creating events. And every year we try to do at least 1 or 2 events with the Trans Lounge at the LA LGBT Center.
Yeah.
And we are hosting our 2nd annual speed friending event on May 31st.
Tell me what that is. That sounds so fun and like something I want to go participate in.
It's the best thing ever. I mean, last year it was like 75 people. It happens on the roof of the LA LGBT Center. It's all on trans and non-binary people. We got all these long tables. We get 2 chairs across from each other. Everybody gets a prompt. You get a 3-minute timer, and you meet each other for 3 minutes. You answer the prompts, and if you feel like you hit it off, you get each other's phone numbers.
That's so awesome.
We had food last year, and we were trying to get people off of the roof last year to leave. They would not leave. They stayed for like an hour and a half after the event. They didn't want to leave. So we're doing that again on May 31st.
I love that.
Because there's a lot of isolation, you know, even when they would come upstairs. They weren't talking at all, and they were kind of like standing off to the corner. As soon as we started, they couldn't stop talking. And that's why we're also running a lot of groups right now, support groups, because I'm watching this community isolate and go to fear. So that's why these things are so fun. And, you know, it's just more we can do. And then Trans Pride only started, I don't know how many years ago.
Right. When is that?
But there was not Trans Pride, certainly in
June 14th is Trans Pride this year in LA.
Yeah.
So it falls the same week as Juneteenth, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And it's grown, as Casey said. Trans Pride, when it first started, was very small. It was a one-night affair. Then last year, I think there's been some funding issues, so it's going to be one day again this year. But there was a time where it was 3 days: Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
And, this year it's going to be on the 14th, and we'll table that. We always like to table the Pride events.
Of course. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love it. We really just wanted to have y'all here so we could celebrate you and highlight the beautiful and amazing work that you're doing in the community. And I'm just so honored to work side by side with y'all and this
I loved you the first time I met you.
You know, it's funny.
I could tell there was
we just sat at our own little table in our own little corner.
You did.
We just chit
right
chatted
over here. We were
over
like,
our.
me and Mel have the same energy, but it's just
yeah.
like less
We have the
physical.
same birthday too, so that's why we got the same.
That's right.
We have the same birthday.
Yeah.
February 21st.
We're Star Family.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's crazy, right?
I love it. You know, and when things happen like that just align us, it's just really beautiful. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but there is one more hot topic that I want to talk about, and it's something that we're seeing and that I want to ask the professionals about. And it's a very deep subject, and I'm sorry we're getting into this at the end. Are y'all seeing some translateral violence within the trans community, within your organization, or
from outside our community or within our community?
Within our community.
Oh yeah, it's dangerous. It's so much more dangerous out there.
What is it?
It's I think when the current administration came in, I won't say the person's name, but when they came in, it feels like the tone changed of the country, society, our culture changed. It became very much, he's been very, very vocal about being anti-trans, taking away trans-affirming rights, limiting trans-affirming care for youth. So I feel like the tone changed, and I could tell. Like one time I'd be in a restaurant and not even think twice about using the women's restroom. I started to feel, and this is in California and LA, I started to feel a little. So yeah, bullying, a lot of the clients that we work with are experiencing bullying. There's bullying is up, name calling, self-harm is up, suicidality is up, drug use is up, all these coping mechanisms that people are using. Yeah, it's...
go ahead.
No, it's bad.
I was going to say, for the first time in my career, I can't say to a young trans person or non-binary, it's going to get better. Don't worry about it. Like, this is the first time in my life I cannot say it to a parent, and I can't say it to a child because I don't know. You usually would say, well, in the next administration, blah, 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 but we don't know what's going to happen. And I've found that some clients are going back in the closet. Yeah. Like, they were working on their legal documents. Now they're like, I don't want to go through an airport. And because my clients that have been going through the airport in the last few months are always getting, challenged and have to go through a search. And I just tell people, if you're a trans woman, I want it to be by a woman, and it has to be in a private room.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is the first time that, I was ready to retire, and then this happened. It's like, I can't go anywhere because I have to see a day again when, there's not so much darkness. And I think that's why Grace and I and the rest of the team, and you guys too, like, one day at a time right now. Don't, you're talking about scrolling. I mean, we have to talk about clients about how much social media are you going to allow your children or adults even to be on right now.
And I like, just on a personal level, Casey, is like someone who's been kind of at the forefront of a lot of like trans issues and trans healthcare and all of those things. This must be heartbreaking. To see everything like that you have worked your entire career for starting to be dismantled. Like, and I can't imagine the heartbreak as a person who's been in this field, working and helping and advocating.
I never thought
would be like
we would be here.
Yeah.
I was really excited about Obama, and even though he wasn't on board right away, and Biden, and I just felt like, wow, we're really progressing.
Yeah.
And I am heartbroken because I never thought it would happen, that we'd go this far back.
Right.
But I think gender wellness is around hope, and I don't want to report on every negative thing that's going on in the world. I want to talk about milestones and what we are doing.
Yeah.
And again, back then there were no insurance carriers.
No.
So people were paying out of pocket.
That's right.
So, I don't want to say if there's a will, there's a way, but we were able to do it with nothing. And it is heartbreaking. That's why I'm saying I can't retire, because I feel like it's my second coming.
Yeah.
2015 was the first. 10 years later is now the second.
And the skill set that you have to bring and to offer, working with pretty much next to nothing.
Yes.
With folks and their gender journeys.
Yes.
Having to return.
Yeah.
To that skill set, that's invaluable in the community and at large,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
I think it goes back to the resilience piece.
That's right.
I would love to just honor all of the resilience that's in this room. And I want to personally thank you on behalf of No Matter What Recovery and the No Matter What Club for coming and sharing your stories. And obviously, I know Mel appreciates it. We've been talking about it.
And I appreciate you guys. We do a lot.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the work y'all do too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Such a lovely conversation. That's all I got.
All right. Well, we will look forward to seeing you all on another episode of the No Matter What Club. See you next week.